Quarter of an hour of the second half gone. And now through to Dougan. It's number 2. Good running by Hegan. Oh, and a chance for Dougan.
He wasn't made to fit in. He didn't chase affection. He didn't wait for permission. And he never lowered his voice just to be liked. Derek Dougan walked onto pitches like a man arriving for war, not for applause. He played with defiance, spoke with weight, and carried the bruises of every battle he refused to avoid. Some said he argued too much. Others said he cared too deeply. Clubs let him go. Boards pushed him out. A country turned its back when he stood for something more. But Wolves never flinched. There, he became more than a player. He became the Doog. Some wore the badge, he wore the rebellion. He wasn't clean. He wasn't quiet, but he was unforgettable. And when they told him to soften, smile, obey, he did what only the rarest do. He grew louder. Subscribe to honor the men who didn't obey, the ones who made football feel like a fight worth watching. His name was Alexander Derek Dougan. Born on 20th January 1938 in the raw streets of Belfast, Northern Ireland, a city where you learned early that the world doesn't wait. His family lived working class. Hard hands, long hours, not much comfort, no shortcuts, just storms. As a boy, he kicked a ball in alleys lined with factory ash, dreamed of stadiums while hauling crates in a toy warehouse. By 16, he was working shifts while others played after school. Life didn't offer him grace. So he grew up with grit. He joined Crego Boys, a small youth side with no spotlight, but fire finds a way. And by 17, he was playing for Distillery FC, one of Belfast's proudest clubs. There, the hunger turned into steel. He sprinted like a man trying to escape something, tackled like it was personal, scored like it was survival. In 1956, he helped Distillery win the Irish Cup. No agent, no parade, just muddy boots and a medal that meant he belonged. That's when people started calling him the Doog. Not because he asked for it, but because he made you remember him. Before he became a legend, he was just a name on a transfer list. From 1957 to 1967, Derek Dougan wore 5 shirts in 10 years and never truly belonged to any of them. Portsmouth came first. Signed in August 1957, a skinny kid from Belfast, priced at £4,000. But the club sank into relegation, and so did his patience. In March 1959, he joined Blackburn Rovers, £15,000. More fire in his boots. He scored, often, reached the FA Cup final in 1960. But dropped a bombshell the day before, a transfer request. He wasn't chasing medals, he was chasing meaning. Next, Aston Villa, 1961 to 1963. On paper, it looked promising, but a car crash shattered more than bones. He lost form, lost trust, lost time. Then came Peterborough United, 1963, a drop to the 3rd division. Some called it failure, he called it air. 38 goals in 77 games. Proof that fire doesn't fade, it waits, but even redemption couldn't hold him. By 1965, he was back in the 1st division, this time with Leicester City. He scored goals, but clashed with authority again. Management didn't want a voice, they wanted obedience, and Dougan was never built for that. So they let him go. 5 clubs, 10 years, trophies, none. But scars, plenty. The game kept pushing him away, and still, he refused to disappear. In the spring of 1967, after 10 years of doors closing behind him, Derek Dougan walked through one that stayed open. Wolves signed him for £50,000. Some said he was too old, too worn, too loud. Wolves didn't care. They saw the flame and let it burn. He made his debut at Molineux and scored a hat-trick. That day, the bond was made. Player and club built from the same cloth. Working class, proud, defiant, the kind that never asks to be noticed, but always is. He became their leader, their noise, their fire. With him, they won promotion back to the 1st division that same year. With him, Wolves won the inaugural Texaco Cup, the 1970-71 competition, beating Heart of Midlothian in the final in 1971. With him, they reached the UEFA Cup final in 1972, losing narrowly to Spurs, but walking off the pitch as giants. And in 1974, they lifted the League Cup at Wembley, beating Manchester City. And he was at the heart of it all. He wasn't just scoring, he was commanding, controlling, carving Wolves' name into English football's steel. His strike partner John Richards said, "Derek was more than a goal scorer. He was our fire." Over 8 seasons, he made 258 league appearances for Wolves and scored 95 league goals. Each one came with weight, with character, with noise. Because in Wolverhampton, Derek Dougan finally became more than a footballer. He became the Doog. In 1973, Derek Dougan did something most footballers never dare. He risked everything for something bigger than the game. That summer, Brazil came to Dublin, and Dougan helped assemble the impossible, a team made up of players from both the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, 2 nations divided by history, politics, blood, but for one night, united under one name, Shamrock Rovers tamed. He didn't just play, he captained, he scored, and he proved what football could be, not just a contest, but a bridge. The match ended 4-3 to Brazil, but the result didn't matter. What mattered was that Dougan had stood for unity in a time of bombs, barriers, and suspicion, and that had a cost. The Irish Football Association hadn't approved the game, and they never picked him again. His final cap came months earlier, 14th of February 1973, against Cyprus. It ended not with applause, but with quiet removal. He finished with 43 caps for Northern Ireland, 8 goals, and a legacy sealed not by goals alone, but by the silence that followed his most courageous act. Because Dougan didn't just play for a country, he played for a future. And not everyone forgave him for that. When the boot slowed down, the voice sharpened. While most players faded quietly into retirement, Derek Dougan stepped onto a new pitch. The one where contracts were signed, where voices were silenced, where footballers were still being treated like property. And there, he did what he'd always done. He fought. As chairman of the Professional Footballers Association from 1970 to 1978, he became the figurehead of a new era, an era where players weren't just men in kits, but men with rights. He campaigned for freedom of contract, pushed for pensions, called out hypocrisy, and demanded the game treat its players like people, not pawns. The PFA Awards were introduced in the 1973-74 season, with the first Players' Player Award presented in 1974. Off the field, he became a writer, a broadcaster, a regular on screen, sharp-tongued, witty, unfiltered. He published books, tackled politics, spoke openly about the broken parts of the game. Some hated it, some feared it, but none could ignore it. Because even without the goals, Derek Dougan was still scoring where it hurt most. In 1982, the walls at Molineux were crumbling. Wolves were on the verge of collapse, not just on the pitch, but in the books. Years of mismanagement, mounting debt, and silence from the boardroom had left a proud club bleeding. And just when it seemed no one would come, he did. Derek Dougan returned, not as a striker, not as a pundit, but as a rescuer. He led a 4-man consortium to buy the club, took over as chairman, and promised to rebuild what history was threatening to erase. At first, it worked. Wolves won promotion from the 2nd Division. The crowd believed again. But behind the scenes, cracks remained. Money ran thin. Internal battles resurfaced. The dream he carried began to fracture, and in January 1985, he resigned. No fanfare, no excuses, just a quiet exit from a club he tried to save with everything he had left. Because Dougan didn't come back for legacy. He came back for loyalty. And even when it failed, it still meant something. Even when the spotlight moved on, he never stood still. In his final years, Derek Dougan stayed fierce. He wrote, he argued. He spoke for forgotten footballers the game had long abandoned. He stepped into politics, ran for office, took up causes no one else wanted. Still too loud for comfort, still too fearless to fade quietly. But even men like him run out of time. In April 2000, Derek Dougan was taken to Wolverhampton Crown Court, charged with attacking his former girlfriend's new partner, Eland Mason. It was alleged he struck him with a pool cue in a jealous rage. Dougan denied the accusations, and the court ultimately cleared him of both assault and burglary. On 24 June 2007, at home in Wolverhampton, he died of a heart attack. He was 69. The silence that followed was louder than anything he'd ever said. St. Peter's Collegiate Church opened its doors. Fans filled the street in gold, scarves tied to gates, speakers set up outside the church, because not everyone could fit inside the goodbye. There were no long speeches, no rewriting of the past, just respect. 3 years later, in 2010, Wolverhampton Wanderers placed his name where it belonged, in the club's Hall of Fame. There is no statue, no stand named after him, but among the faithful, his name doesn't need a plaque to be permanent. Because some legends don't stand still in bronze, they run wild in memory. He didn't play the game to be liked, he played it to be free. And freedom has a price. Derek Dougan was never easy. He disrupted dressing rooms, he disobeyed orders, he demanded more from everyone, including himself. But in the end, he left more behind than most ever dare to dream. He was one of the first to fight for players' rights, to question the Football League, to speak out when silence was safer. He helped bring together Ireland's divided squads and paid for it with his international career. He was chairman of Wolves, broadcaster, writer, agitator, visionary, icon. He wasn't just a striker, he was a storm in boots. A man who chased the ball like it owed him something. And often it did. Today, fans still chant his name. Old tapes still show that blur of limbs, that fearless leap. And those who watched him know they saw something rare. Not just a footballer, but a force. A man who, even now, feels too big to bury. Subscribe to honor the legends who never played it safe. The rebels, the leaders, the unforgettable. This was Derek Dougan, and his fire never went out.